Frankly, Putin is backing a person that's truly an evil person. This is an animal. Even some of the worst tyrants in the world didn't use the kind of gases that they used, and some of the gases are unbelievably potent.
I trust he regrets it now, considering the damage done to his Air Force. But when I say he should think long and hard about it, I'll just let the mission speak for itself on that score.
The Assad regime, the Iranians, and Hezbollah. Is that a long-term alliance that serves Russia's interest?
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's in Moscow ahead of meetings. Don't think he's going to meet with Vladimir Putin, but we will see. This as the line is being drawn about what further action may look like inside Syria if Syria uses barrel bombs, which they have been using against rebels. It looks like the U.S. is going to act. Here's the Defense Secretary.
It's not about whether it's delivered with an artillery shell or it's delivered by a helicopter with a barrel bomb or a fighter aircraft with a bomb. It's about chemical weapons, and we've made clear where we stand on that. President Trump has made it exceedingly clear where the United States stands on that sort of malfeasance.
So let's start in Syria, but also talk about North Korea and what's developing there. Let's bring in our panel. Editor-in-Chief of Life Zet, Laura Ingraham. Julie Pace, White House correspondent for the Associated Press, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Laura, obviously they're feeling emboldened by the reaction, I think, in the Trump administration to this action in Syria. But there are questions about what's next.
I think it's interesting that Tillerson was talking about what's in Russia's interest, and you can see the slight movements, perhaps, toward a re-engagement of the old Soviet Union, the election tampering and all of that put aside for the moment. Is there ever going to be a solution in Syria without Russia and the United States coming to some understanding, whether it's part of a grand plan or grand bargain involving not expanding NATO or the Ukraine or peeling Iran out of this situation? A lot of smart people have written about this, but it is difficult to see how this ends with just the United States getting involved, more military strikes, without Putin just coming to that conclusion that Tillerson referenced. How is this good in Russia's long-term interest? So the fact that he said that, look, I have my concerns about getting mired in the Middle East again, but I thought that was smart the way he phrased that, and I was heartened by that.
There is this parsing of words about regime change, Julie, and what Nikki Haley, the ambassador to the UN, has said, what the Secretary of State has said, but aren't they saying regime change in a political diplomatic sense, not boots on the ground to take Assad out?
Right. That's when they talk about regime change in Assad's future, it doesn't sound at this point like we're talking about a U.S.-led military effort to actually oust him from office. I mean, the thing that I'm struck by when you hear Nikki Haley over the weekend, and Tillerson to somewhat of a lesser extent talk about Assad. They talk about how it's unsustainable for Assad to stay in power, how they don't see a future for Syria with him in office. These are the exact same things that the Obama administration was saying for years. The problem is always, how do you force that, as long as, to Laura's point, Russia doesn't believe that they have a reason to walk away from Assad, if Iran doesn't think that they have a reason to walk away. And we don't see yet from this administration how they're going to try to put that pressure on Russia and Iran to back away from Assad.
Charles.
I'm always a little bit wary about American Secretary of State or Defense trying to instruct the Russians on what's in the Russian national interest. I would think that the Russians have a better idea of that. It brings you back to John Kerry telling the Russians it was a mistake to go into Ukraine and to take Crimea. I think it's worked out rather well for the Russians. The reason that the Russians are in there is not an affection for Assad, this is Syria, but because as a result of their involvement, they now have a naval base in the warm water Mediterranean. They have an active, very powerful air base in Syria. They have a presence in the Middle East. They are the power. They have displaced the United States, and their entire foreign policy under Putin is to recover the glory and the territory and the influence of the old Soviet Union, one piece at a time. And it does that by taking away from the United States to zero-sum game. So the idea that we're going to persuade them it's not in your interest to stay with Iran and Hezbollah and Assad, who are we to say? Of course it's in the Russian interest. They have succeeded in doing it, and unless we show them a reason to abandon it, they are not going to leave.
And they're in there because of the vacuum created by President Obama and his administration?
And the lack of any pushback. They went in 2015. They are now ensconced, and we have to worry if we're going to establish, for example, a safe zone, which we could have done for years. Now we have to worry about engaging with the Russians, which we are not going to do, so we are deterred from that. This is all a plus for the Russians, and the idea that we're going to tell them what's in their interest is almost amusing. But,
but isn't 59 Tomahawk missiles, isn't that a bit of a message?
I think. Look, again, I'm not all on board with this whole approach, but it was a message. I mean, is it definitive? Of course it wasn't. Assad was flying a couple of days later, and he made a point to say, you haven't stopped us, you ain't going to stop us. But I think Russia has a lot to gain from a United States who's willing to re-engage with them. We don't want Russia and China to get closer, I don't think. I mean, that would be an interesting policy. We just want to continue to see them get closer. And if Donald Trump stays true to his core, which was we want to make sure we take care of our allies, America first, all of that, the pivot to Asia at some point has to happen. Otherwise, we can just spend another 15 years in the Middle East and lose thousands of more men.
I want to clean up this, what has become a big moment online, and from the White House press secretary today, talking about the use of chemical weapons and the reaction to what Sean Spicer said. We'd have a former defense secretary and CIA director now weighing in, and Sean Spicer has come out with another statement clarifying what he meant.
You know, the press secretary is important. He's the one who speaks on behalf of the administration. And when he says the kind of stupid things that he did today, it hurts the administration. It changes the story.
Well, today I was trying to describe the attack that Assad made on his own people of using chemical weapons. Frankly, I mistakenly used an inappropriate and insensitive reference to the Holocaust, for which there's frankly no comparison. Obviously, that is not what I was intending to do, and I obviously, especially during this week, regret using that term and apologize, and hope that we can continue to focus on the President's decisive action that he took to make sure that we deal with the situation in Syria.
He tried to clean it up, Julie, in the press briefing, then he issued a statement, and then he came back out to the cameras and did a round. Politics 101, stay away from Hitler. Hitler
references are a very bad idea in pretty much every circumstance that I can think of if you're a press secretary. I think it's good that he came out and apologized without any caveats to it. It was a distraction for the president, but it's a real lesson, again, for this White House, that what you say at that podium is U.S. policy. It represents the president, and you can't wing it there. It is a place where you have the ability to really do harm to the president's message every day.
I think it was Mike Kinsley who once said, the one rule in debating is whoever invokes Hitler first loses. Spicer's way over his head. He made a terrible mistake. I thought he was rather sincere in the statement that you just showed. He really wasn't thinking about it. He didn't make that connection. There was no malevolence intended. I'd give him a pass. It's a mistake. It's the Holy Week. Let's let it go.
Quickly, I want to touch, Laura, on North Korea. This is what John McCain said about the threat that we're facing there.
The most immediate crisis right now is this crazy fat kid. He is not rational. Everything I've read about him, he's not rational. What's the worst kind of adversary would be an irrational person with a nuclear weapon.
And here's the president's tweets on this. I explained to the president of China that a trade deal with the U.S. will be far better for them if they solve the North Korean problem. North Korea is looking for trouble. If China decides to help, that would be great. If not, we will solve the problem without them, USA. As North Korea says, you do anything, we are going to nuke you.
Yeah, well, maybe calling the North Korean leader the fat idiot or crazy fat kid. If he's that unstable, you probably don't want John McCain out there calling him that.
But Dennis Rodman is good.
Yeah, but Dennis Rodman, I mean, first of all, he's more like a Cabbage Patch doll, but that's aside. I think this is really the thing that does concern Donald Trump the most. I mean, he said it to friends. The thing that keeps him up at night is North Korea, precisely because the guy's so unpredictable. Kills anyone who gets in his way. I know people make the same charge about Putin, but Maybe not so many Putin's family members have been killed, but this guy is bound to do anything. And they always saber rattle when they need more aid, they need more food. And I don't know about, tying trade to this. I'm not sure that's going to work with China. We still don't have our U.S. trade representative in place, Bob Lighthizer, which, Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer have got to come to some deal on that because that's hurting us. But I think this truly does keep the president up at night. I think it's a concern, and I don't think it's overblown. It's very different from Syria.